Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. We got a big Cubs win, and even better, we have a very special guest with us. Before we get to all of it, I am Ron Luce, joined by Nick Hudson and our special guest. Nick, before we get to our special guest, because I want to give him the floor, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Having a good time. This has just been a fun time for the Cubs and for us, and it's exciting. But I'm excited to dissect this central race a little bit with Tim here as well. It's going to be a fun episode.
Absolutely. 36 runs in 2 games is really cool and tough. But let's get to our special guest. I had to throw the
you had to. I understand.
I had to.
You absolutely had to, because I would vice versa if it was the other way around.
Just a little
Sure.
dart at the dartboard. But
Absolutely.
to everybody listening along with us, to everybody joining us live, we are joined graciously tonight by our special guest, Tim Daniel. Tim, you are a part of the Late Night Reds show on the Riverfront. That is where you guys can be found in terms of your YouTube channel and where you guys broadcast on a local basis. You are a friend of Joey's, which obviously we all call him the cheese man here at Cubs on Tap because he's Mr. Ricotta. But Tim, thank you for joining us, and we'd love everybody, you to tell everybody just a little bit about you and kind of how you got into the world of covering the Cincinnati Reds.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me. What a night to have me, by the way. Gosh.
I
been better for you
legitimately
guys.
felt bad because so little preface for everybody. Cubs on Tap, Late Night Reds, very good friends. Like,
Yes,
this is a friendly. I legitimately
Absolutely.
did feel bad that the game played out the way it did, and we were having you on.
It is
tonight.
what it is,
Not
man.
even gonna lie.
It is what
Not
it
even
is.
gonna lie. But the floor is yours, sir.
So this is kind of funny that Ron mentioned the friendship thing here. So I actually am like, I don't know, I almost feel like I'm a transplant Chicagoan at the side, because I mentioned, if you caught my show on Sunday, diehard Reds fan, diehard Bulls fan, diehard Bengals fan, and the Blackhawks are my hockey team of choice, though I'm not the most knowledgeable about hockey, but I'm learning. So it's like Chicago has like a big special place in my heart. So I like doing this stuff. It's a lot of fun. I've been covering the Reds now for about 3 years, but I've been a Reds fan my whole life. My background's actually in basketball. So I've been covering Xavier, University of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Miami of Ohio for a long time. Had a basketball network that just recently shut down called the 48 Minutes Basketball Network, covering the whole league. More or less just bitching about the Bulls was kind of the synopsis of it. But yeah, I think the Bulls and the Reds are like perfect parallels to each other as far as like two teams that had one great decade and their legacies built off it. So there you go.
That is incredibly well put, Tim. And again, thank you to you for joining us as well. It's so funny that you bring that up, just the Chicago connection. First off, I'm gonna do a shameless plug. Four Feathers podcast here at the On Tap Sports Network. We're the Blackhawks podcast. I am a co-host on there. We will get you caught up to speed on all things hockey.
So Ben, my co-host,
yes,
on Late Night Reds. Like, I like the Blackhawks. I love watching them. Like, I'm excited for this year. But like I said, like, my X's and O's is not necessarily like, I'm still trying to figure out icing. Ben, diehard really? Blackhawks fan, super into it. Yeah, man.
Yes.
So Ben's the guy you would absolutely love to have Ben on your show.
Oh, I'll tell you what. If you guys are willing, I love how this has already gone off the rails and we're only 5 minutes in. If you two are willing, if you two ever come out to Chicago, we'll go to a Blackhawks game.
Oh, I love the United Center. Don't tempt me.
I'm tempting you. I am absolutely tempting you.
Absolutely love the United Center.
That is an intentional temptation.
I like
to get you out here for a Blackhawks game.
You're selling me.
Perfect. We'll see if I still sell you after this show, but we'll talk about that nonetheless. But unfortunately for you, Tim, and but very fortunate for us as Cubs fans, as Jeremiah says here in the comments, had us in the first half. Ain't gonna lie. Scott says we were nervous at the beginning of the game. Completely agree. But this has been such an interesting series. Because first off, I have a bone to pick with the Cubs. Not just you, Tim. I have a bone to pick with the Cubs. I was in attendance on Monday night and watched that team strand numerous men on base to lose by 1 run and then go put up a record-setting 36 runs in 2 games. when I'm not there. And I was so upset about it. So upset about it. But I will dial back the emotion because they still won games. They're up 2-1 in the series. It's all good and dandy.
Yeah.
But Nick, I want to hear from you as well. Tim, your thoughts too. Just this Cubs team feels like it's rolling at the right time. And correct me if I'm wrong. Does it feel like this team is being carried by the veterans that every Cubs fan thought were going to carry them this season? Right, Dansby Swanson. I know Joey Votto would like a word, but might be the hottest hitter in the galaxy right now. I think that's 4 home runs in 3 games now for Dansby Swanson.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. He's so good.
He's finally starting to slug. Cody Bellinger looked like an MVP in the month of July.
Yeah.
His stat line is disgusting. He was like an 1124 OPS player and a 400 average. NL player of the month as well, by the way. It's shameless plug. I wrote that article over on TabSportsNet.com.
Yeah, as he should be.
Like the core guys of this team are finally starting to carry them. It does it almost feel like that sense of urgency that kind of got turned up a little bit after the All-Star break of this team could sell, kind of hit a switch with these big vets, and all of a sudden they kind of just put the team on their back and carried them the whole way. Especially, I would love an outsider's opinion as well, Nick, you as well. Like, what do you guys think that is going on right now? Because it really does feel like these two are kind of leading the charge of like, hey, we need to get our act together, otherwise this is not going to even have a chance. Nick, start with you, buddy.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that was a wake-up call. Selling, they obviously don't want that, so they really have turned it on, especially as of late. Something that is new is this just offensive power surge, the home runs. I mean, where the hell was this the first half of the goddamn season? So
Correct.
It's like, it's great to see. But like you said, veterans, carrying this team, and prove it, guys like Cody Bellinger. I mean, that was a gamble that more than has paid off. So it's fun. It's really all I can say about it is now it's fun baseball. Exactly. It's just a fun time. And what it does is it allows the pitching to have a little less pressure. As you've seen, the starters have struggled a little bit as of late. Not like in the beginning half where they were carrying. Now the offense can kind of step in. So it's great. I think that it's going to continue. But I think the selling had a lot to do with it. It just felt like it. You could feel it day in and day out, following it with national media, that they had to win if they wanted to just be alive. They knew it. There was no other chance of anything happening. So they had to win. So I think that really did wake them up a lot. And ever since then, they've played completely different baseball, even more than what we thought in the beginning, where we thought they were just going to have to play these tight games, tight defense. They just came out and had big offensive nights. So it's great to see. It really is.
Yeah, big runs are a lot of fun. Tim, I would love to know your thoughts too, especially from like a third party, right? You're not in the Cubs fan base. Like, what was it like being a Reds fan listening to the national media kind of be like, are the Cubs going to buy? Are the Cubs going to sell? Can they get their more or less shit together in order to be in a position to compete in this division? Or are they just going to kind of roll over and die? Like, what was that like for the last handful of weeks, especially being a Reds fan who you guys surged to the top of the standings, in late May, early June, have stayed there ever since, and rightfully so. Good ball club overall.
Yeah.
What was that like from an outsider's perspective, kind of hearing the noise of what's going on with the Cubs?
It was interesting because, you certainly do wonder, right? When it's not a team you have your eye on every single day and you're in the same division and you're obviously looking at them to kind of be like, okay, what's going on? Like, I fully remember interacting with you when the Pirates were in first place and you guys were beating the Pirates. And I'm like, yes, keep it going. We're in second place.
Two
like,
more.
yeah, like, please. And now it's like, okay, so now that's likely the competition, right? And, when Marcus Stroman is apparently being rumored to float out there, all Reds fans are sitting there like, man, we would absolutely love to have Marcus Stroman help these young pitchers go into the postseason. And now it's looking like not only is that not going to happen, but the Cubs might potentially make this a 3-team postseason division. And so, yeah, it's certainly just interesting. And like, I have Cody Bellinger and Dansby Swanson on my fantasy team. So of course I was keeping an eye on what they were doing. And that kind of made it interesting. I talked to Joey about this on Sunday, but like, the one thing that's so great about all this is the fact that the Cardinals and the Pirates are the ones looking up at all of us, right?
Mhm.
Fuck Pittsburgh. It's the worst city in the universe. Um,
Ooh, really?
hate it.
There's some animosity there. I'm
Oh
gonna have
God,
to
beyond.
tickle that
I
that
probably should not have
animosity
used
here in a
those
second.
exact words,
It's
but
fine. That's
It's
yeah.
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
We literally
Agreed.
end every episode with "fuck the Cardinals," so you
Fuck
are
the Cardinals.
totally fine. You are totally fine.
But the Cubs is just like, it was one of those things where I joked about this on my show Sunday, where I said if I was going to bet on a team at the beginning of the year to go 81-81, I was going to pick the Cubs because where they were super strong, they were very strong. Where they had weaknesses, they were very glaring weaknesses, and now it's like kind of like fully reversed. It's impressive, You're of course irritated as a Reds fan being on the opposite end of these 36 runs in 2 games, but you're also, as a baseball fan, like that's pretty impressive, even if like 9 of those runs are off Luke Maley, the backup catcher.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's the thing, right? That you think about when it comes down to these games is like they're inflated run totals. Like, but again, there's enough of a blowout to warrant Luke Maley coming in and giving up those 9 runs, right? Like, it's not just it is what it is. FTC, FTB, the Brewers get to be in that equation as well, as Scott says FTC, FTC.
Is this like the
But
ECW crowd over here? Like, holy moly.
oh yeah, FTC. FTC's we've already made the joke that like the Cubs on tap shirts that we're gonna print in the future are gonna, be the Cubs colors and everything. And then there's gonna be this weird little red patch on the sleeve that just says FTC in white letters on a red patch. It's just gonna be the full blown, like it's more or less like unofficial tagline of Cubs on tap
I
is
like it.
FTC.
I
It's
like it.
just forever and ever everybody tries to build up that like, oh, the Brewers are the big rival in the division. They have been probably the last couple of years.
Mhm.
The White Sox, which it's not a real rivalry, don't let anybody tell you otherwise, but it's the Cardinals. It's always been the Cardinals. Like,
Sure.
if the Cubs, this season has been more fun, I think, for Cubs fans watching the Cardinals suck than it has up until like the last 10 games watching the Cubs be good.
Yeah, I
It
get
really
that.
has. It's been that
Yeah.
way.
Sure.
But speaking of one guy here that Scott brings up in the comments, because there's a little bit of a story here that ties it all in. He says the Candyman, Jaime Candelario, 8 for 9, hottest start after being traded in below history. He says, assuming, which fair, probably is. I think
Yeah,
if I remember
it's hard to do
correctly,
better than that, right?
if I remember correctly, I think his 4-hit game was the first time in like maybe the last 5 or 6 years that like a guy that got traded at the deadline had a 4-hit game with his new club in any stretch after he was traded. But I think the Heimer Candelario situation is so interesting because I read an article today over at The Athletic. PJ Mooney, great writer over there,
Mhm.
wrote an article about Candelario and how he kind of called his shot because the Cubs lost 3 out of 4 to the Nationals, right? Back in that terrible month of May, and Candelario did some damage against them. And then at the beginning of what was kind of the streak that got the Cubs back into the buyer conversation versus seller conversation, he hit a big home run in that win in the game 1, and the Cubs won the next 2 to take the division and the series, pardon me. And then he supposedly said like, "Hey, keep winning because if you guys keep winning, there's a chance you're going to end up trading for me." And he literally called his shot because it's
Pretty impressive.
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Which is cool because right, like he was a prospect obviously with the Cubs, gets to come back, he settles in. There's a lot of people still here in the organization that were here when he was last here. It's kind of a full circle moment. I kind of said it on last night's show with Juice that it's kind of a full circle moment for Heimer Candelario, but that really accelerated the Cubs run. A 10-1 in 11 games run is what got them to where they are now. And now all of a sudden, like Jeremiah says here in the comments, 2.5 games out of the wild card and the division. And Heimer's old team helping both of us out today, Tim, as the
Yeah.
Washington Nationals walked off the Milwaukee Brewers earlier this afternoon.
Somehow the Reds played worse defense than the Brewers today.
We're going to get to that here in a few minutes because I do want to talk about a certain third baseman that played for you guys this evening. But like, it's just kind of cool to see how that goes. Let's get to that talk really quick because that was like the one thing I came into this episode. I was like, from a Reds perspective, I want to know what was going through your head, Tim. Is the Reds elect to sit Ellie De La Cruz tonight, who has been your guys' third baseman for more or less his entire time being up. Shockingly enough, sitting there on Monday night and looking at the stats of everybody in the lineup, I did not realize how good Matt McClain has been.
Oh my God, bro.
Incredible. Arguably better
You could
than
invite me on a
Ellie did.
podcast and say, Tim, let's just talk Matt McClain for 45 minutes, and
And you'll give me a full
I'm gonna
45.
gush, man. Love the kid.
Noted. He's good. A 900 OPS player? Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. But
Yeah.
even with Cruz's struggles, very interesting decision to play Nick Senzel tonight at third base. He hasn't played a lot of the infield recently. I know, like, he started his career with the Reds at second, then he moved out to center. He's kind of bounced around the outfield. He's kind of done a little bit of everything for the Reds in his tenure there. What do you think? I know Ellie De La Cruz has struggled in this series. Do you really think it was worth sitting him tonight, especially from a defensive standpoint, where Senzel had really two costly errors for the Reds tonight?
This is out of the norm for Nick Senzel. It was an awful game. There's no defending it. But realistically, he's played really good third base.
Okay.
So yes and no. David Bell has done this thing with, you only have 8 positions you can put in a lineup, right? So one guy's getting the night off every night. Last night, Joey got the night off, kind of thing. So tonight was Ellie's turn. And so Nick Senzel, I don't know if a lot of people necessarily, if your listeners knew this, is in the top 10 in baseball in hitting left-handed pitching. So Drew Smiley being the starter. He didn't necessarily have the best night at the plate, obviously, but that's the thought process there.
Sure.
At the point when the game kind of got out of control there, when they had that 5 runs in a row with like 7 straight hits, probably wasn't worth bringing Ellie De La Cruz in at that point. So I'm not necessarily surprised. I'm just disappointed because, like, I'm the president of the Nick Senzel fan club. I shit you not. I'm probably one of like 4 Reds fans that have a Nick Senzel jersey. I believe in the talent. I know he's had a disappointing major league career. But I think he's a Major League Baseball player. If it's not in Cincinnati, it's going to be somewhere. So, tonight sucked. I mean, but, look around. Stuart Fairchild if he makes that catch in center field against the Ivy, we might be having a different conversation right now. If Jake Fraley makes that, like Will Benson's the only outfielder that looked good tonight in the field. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, it really is. And Nick, I'm going to turn it over to here because I want to hear your thoughts on this. But did not know that about Nick Senzel. First off, that he crushes left-handed pitching. Admittedly,
nor should you know. It's not like it's
no, but I will say, like, to me, I hear your passion for Senzel as the talent, because I remember when he came up and he had those. Oh
God, we thought he was our Chris Bryant.
A brilliance, absolute brilliance, where he could hit, he could do everything and looked good. Again, I feel like the Reds have just consistently always had talent that is like, ooh, you're right there. And they're getting there, right? I think Matt McClain is a slam dunk. I think he's your shortstop of the future. Agreed. He looks great. I think Ellie's going to be just fine. Yeah, he's struggled a little bit lately, but he's just such a physical freak. I think people get so tied up in the numbers with baseball players that like, and Ellie De La Cruz, they go, well, he's only a 780 OPS player. And it's like, yeah, but he crushes the ball 700 feet and he makes the play that physically no other player in baseball.
He's 21 years old.
Right. And he's a baby.
Yeah.
He's a baby. There's like probably 1% of Major League Baseball players currently in the MLB that debuted at 21. Let's be entirely honest here. He's a baby. He's going to learn. He's going to get better. And he's still been a very good player for you guys.
Oh, for sure.
On my fantasy team. He's been fantastic. And trust me, he's won me a lot of games so far this year.
I'll be Elliot trash talking, but like if Ellie De La Cruz is on second base, your pitcher's scared for his life.
Hell yeah. Because he could swipe third, and then if you decide to throw one in the dirt and it gets away from your catcher, he's scoring because he's 6'5", and if he dives from halfway down the third baseline, he's gonna touch the plate.
Yeah, he looks like T. Higgins when he runs. It's
bananas.
Yeah,
he's an absolute freak of nature. But I think it's just Senzel's been such a good player and different things like that. But you mentioned one bad game, the defense just in totality for the Reds was not good tonight.
No, I don't know.
And Nick, this is where I want to hear your thoughts, because that's one thing I think we as Cubs fans have been able to pride ourselves on this season with our ball club is the defense has been immaculate. Like they really invested in the defense, right? Obviously, Dansby Swanson coming in. Somebody mentioned it earlier. We've had so many comments, which big shout out to our comment section as always. You guys are the best. Jeremiah said Dansby's only one WAR behind Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. He has been
I'll be
that good.
damned. Wow.
Dansby has actually elevated his OPS. He is 1 point away from being an 800 OPS player again. He has been red hot since he got back from the IL. But Nick, like I think it really shows in a game like tonight where that investment of the defense for the Cubs is reassuring, right? Because Swanson, Horner, you go out and get Candelario, who is really good actually at both third and first. If you look at his fielding percentage, he's good at both positions. Yeah, they had Wisdom in tonight, which was kind of weird, but you say I was back. He looked good. He looked okay. He got the big home run. Belly's a Gold Glover. Hap's a Gold Glover. You're starting to see this year that like once the bats get going, the defense is consistently good enough to be there every single night. Where just again using the Reds unfortunately as an example tonight, you have a bad night defensively, it's going to cost you. So like, just what are your thoughts so far about the Cubs defensively? Because I feel like throughout this hot streak, everybody appreciates the offense, which is 100% true, but the defense has been just cool, calm, and consistent all season long.
Yeah. The defense has not wavered at all, not one bit. And it's funny actually. Yesterday when Jed was on, I turned to my girlfriend. I said, "Isn't it so reassuring that we're not talking about the defense all the time? Because a lot of teams are." That's what I said.
Yeah.
And then it really clicked for me that I really like what they're building here. I really like when you hear Jed, when you hear Ross, they really value defense, and they're valuing it more than the old regime. And they are building something that is almost impenetrable, that infield. I mean,
Ooh,
it's
good word.
yeah, it's wonderful. So yeah, it gives me a lot of confidence. And like you said, once the bats showed up, it kind of just put it all into perspective that you have pitchers that are people that really rely on guys behind them. And when they're on and the guys behind them are on, they could shut shit down real quick. And that's what I really enjoy. I mean, I like that you have that confidence. And I think that it's necessary, especially with this brand of baseball that the Cubs play. Not like in the last couple days, obviously, this is very different with the power surge out of nowhere. But if the Cubs are going to be consistently winning ball games, they have to be good at defense. They just have to. So it's a great start. It's like building the foundation right. And that's what I like with Jed and this Cubs team is it really seems like he mentioned, he watched every single one of Dansby's balls that he took. He watched tons of tape on him, so he knew exactly what to do with this. And defense is really important. You see it all over the league that it can win, and for tonight, unfortunately, it could turn things around really quick, and it does. So it's great.
Yeah, it is funny, Tim. You caught the Cubs at a really weird time. Like their offense is
But in
performing
May, you guys caught the Reds at a weird time.
fair.
Yeah,
The
you know what I
Cubs
mean?
were also
Like-
atrocious in May. Like they
Right,
could not
yeah.
hit the broadside of a barn if you gave them like a cannonball. It was that bad. It
Yeah.
was bad. But just some love for the comment section here, really quick. Hank Rodriguez saying Cubs 3 back in the division, not too shabby. Facts. They're also 2.5 back now in the wild card. And he followed that up by saying, "Damn, this is one crazy fun season. Don't stop now, boys." Completely agree. And then Jeremiah with does the Luke Miley pitch tomorrow comment.
Oh no,
That one came through and it made me giggle, like mid your discussion, Nick, because I saw that come through and it actually made me laugh.
It's very
But
funny. Yeah.
I think it is really fun now because you mentioned it earlier, Tim, right? Like the Cubs have now played themselves into this being a 3-horse race.
Mhm.
It is 3 games separating the Cubs and the Reds. The Brewers are a half game back of your Cincinnati Reds now for first place in the division. It's going to be a fun run down the road here. And, we're 25 minutes in. We've talked a little bit about the game. Big power surge for the Cubs. 12 home runs in the last 2 games as well with the 36 runs. Very abnormal power surge for this Cubs team. I loved Christopher Morel hitting higher in the lineup. I think that was long overdue. Hitting guys like Seiya Suzuki lower in the lineup, I think that's okay. I think that's better for him, and it paid off tonight. Dansby's hot. Cody's hot. Things are going good right now in the world of Cubs baseball. But let's turn this to a little bit of trade deadline talk because, Tim, I want to hear your opinion about what the Reds did. Nick, I want to hear your opinion about what the Cubs did. And then we're going to tie this thing all together. I sat back and watched the trade deadline unfold, Tim, and said, wow, for a first place team that said they were going to invest, which Scott called out on our show last night that Juice and I did because we talked very heavily about the trade deadline. He said the Reds did nothing at the deadline. They stood pat. They moved a couple of guys for like cash considerations, our loyal soldier that always gets moved. And
Shout out Jordan Bell.
yeah, big shout out. And next to nothing happened overall with the Reds. Why do you think they didn't invest? Especially because Scott says it. He believes the Reds GM failed the fans.
Oh, absolutely did.
Tim,
Absolutely
the
did.
mic is yours. Go on a rant.
So, I am normally the most glass half full human alive. If you follow me on socials, especially on the Late Night Reds account, I'm just having fun, man. Like, it's all I want to do. Like, there's so much shitty stuff on Twitter. You know, it's just not enjoyable. But last night was like one where I was like, I'm going to go see a movie. I'm turning my phone off. I'm not paying attention to this. Like, whatever happens when I get out of this movie, it's going to be there. And it was a nightmare. And guess what? It should be. You know, you talk about the fact that the Cubs scored 36 runs these last two games. That's because we didn't do what we needed to do. And like where I'm really frustrated is this whole idea that everyone talks about all the time is like what you hear this Rays fan say is like, well, you know, they have all these guys in the minors and they're going to be fine because they're going to bring all these guys up there. I'm like, okay, look, the Cardinals, the Padres, the Mets, the Guardians all made the playoffs last year. They all just unloaded their teams. The Phillies were in the World Series. They are fighting for their life to make the playoffs right now. This is not like basketball. This is not like football. This isn't like the Bengals window where the Bengals window is like, hey, they could win a Super Bowl this year. They could win a Super Bowl next year. This is not like basketball where it's like, look, the Bucks just won a championship. I know they've choked the last couple of times, but they still got Giannis Antetokounmpo. They still got a shot. Like, that does not work this way in baseball. It is so year to year. And the Reds especially are a team that should know that, considering 2010, they win the Central. Surprising team, make a great run. We all know what happens. Roy Halladay throws no hitter, blah, blah, blah. 2011, you're like, okay, cool. Like, all those guys are coming back. It's going to be fine. Wasn't fine. You know, it's like, this happens to them all the time. And so what's so irritating is like, you know, I was like, we should get Justin Verlander. I knew damn well they were not getting Justin Verlander. I'm not stupid. But wouldn't it have been awesome? Yeah, it would have been great.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's just like, okay, you can't get him. Like Michael Lorenzen, like was flat out literally interviewed at the All-Star game. Was like, hey, if they trade for me, I'm excited to go back. Nothing. And it's like, you know, everyone's like, well, you can't really get rid of Cam Collier. I'm like, Cam Collier, who's got a 670 OPS in low A Daytona, we can't get rid of him. That's stupid. That's absolutely stupid. And what I said last week on my show Sunday is like, look, there's nothing wrong with getting prospects. The Reds did a phenomenal job of rebuilding their farm system last year. When everyone was pissed off, they traded Winker and Suarez, and they made all these moves. Like, look, their farm system is loaded now, and it's great. It's absolutely great. But the only thing that matters is major league wins and losses. That's all that matters. If the Reds go 67-93 and don't make the playoffs, obviously, but single A, double A, and triple A all win their league championships, no one cares.
Fact.
And so it's like, that's where I get so frustrated, is because this team should be, you know, they've certainly outperformed all expectations. They've certainly been great. And all these young guys have come up and they've helped this team so much. They've been so fun. And I love watching them every night, even nights like tonight where it just was an awful, awful night on the ball field. But you cannot let these situations slip through your fingers the way they did. It's one thing if it's like you got like a 7-8 game lead. Okay, I can understand it a little more. And they're like, well, Hunter Green and Nick Liddell are coming back. And they probably are. And that's great. And it will definitely help the team out.
Mm-hmm.
But these are also guys who are still figuring out how to pitch in the big leagues. You talked about Ellie De La Cruz earlier, Rod, and how he's so young. Hunter Green, still pretty damn young. Still pretty young. Still does not have like 200 major league innings underneath him. So it's just irritating because I think what this team really needed was a veteran inning starter. Like if they had got Zach Greinke, who's had just an atrocious year at Kansas City, I still would have been happy with that because it's a guy who's like, look, I've won a World Series, I've won Cy Youngs, like I know what it's like to be in these situations. Like I got you guys, but it's really disheartening because it has been such a fun year, and these players have fought like hell to get the situation they're in, and they're just kind of their front office left them out to dry.
Yeah, and Jeremiah brought up an interesting point here, Tim. I want to follow up with here on your thoughts. He says Reds GM said they couldn't get anything done that made sense with their plan. And I think the plan word is the key of that comment.
Jeremiah, what's the plan?
That's kind of what I wanted to ask you.
No one knows the plan.
Okay.
It's like, you don't want to give up top tier prospects. No one does. But guess what? That's how you get good players. Okay?
Yep.
That's how it works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't, it's so freaking irritating, man. Like, it's just like, this is a team that lost 100 games last year. 100.
Yeah.
Like, and not exaggerating. They literally lost 100 games.
No, and that's, and I think, you know what, like I think back to the Cubs of the early 2010s, right? Because like for us, that was, hey, it's the rebuild, right? The Theo and Jed era. This is going to take a while. It's going to be a lot of, I went to, you know how many Paul Mahalam starts I went to in my Cubs fandom lifetime? At least 3 in that like one season.
How many Paul Mahalam starts I went to in my Reds fandom in my lifetime?
I hope enough. I hope enough. Like, and then you watch what those guys turned into. And for that Cubs team, it was guys like Addison Russell. It was guys like, they went out, the first trade they made was Anthony Rizzo, right? Mm-hmm. Like they built the foundation. I think there's such like a balance, like you said, Nick or Tim, because you have the year to year of baseball that is so different, right? Look at the other team on the other side of town for us here in Chicago.
Yeah, great example.
2021, they were hot out the gate. Everybody's like they're the favorite. They rolled into 2022 as the favorite to win the AL, and they fell flat on their face. They went 500 and they didn't do anything, and now they just sold off a bunch of pieces, and they're in no man's land. They're another team owned by Jerry. It makes sense with the whole Bulls thing. I know you can relate, Tim.
Very much.
And so I'm right there with you, and that's why I love what the Cubs did. And Nick, this is where I want to turn it back over to you, buddy. I love what the Cubs did because they went out and they said, okay, Heimer Candelario might be the best rental bat on the market. Plain and simple. Cody Bellinger was off the market coming into the trade deadline. Shohei Ohtani was off the market coming into the trade deadline. Your 2 definitive best bats 2.5 weeks out were gone. They weren't available. And sure, Pete Alonso was made available and other guys were made available. Sure, of course they were. Everybody's available for the right price.
Yeah.
But nobody was willing to pay. Right. Nobody was willing to pay that price. So the Cubs made a great move. They traded from surplus. They have a lot of pitching. They have a lot of middle infielders. What do? They send DJ Hurst. They send Kevin Made, a left-handed pitcher and a shortstop, to the Nationals. And right now, Heimer Candelario looks like the best freaking addition you could have made to this team. Because Juice and I said it on last night's show. And Nick, this is where I'm going to turn it over to you, bud. Because we said this Cubs team, and Mitch said it in our Twitter space that we did, a collaboration with our friends over at Dinger's Podcast. This lineup looks drastically different with just one name that is an impact name in the lineup. Truthfully, looks wildly different. It's crazy to think that, again, not trying to take a shot, but the Reds couldn't justify maybe moving a middle 10 to 20 prospect or 2 to get that impact player that's going to drastically change your team. In the Cubs case, it was one more bat. In the Reds case, maybe it was that starting veteran pitcher that is going to teach these young guys how to be professionals and teach Hunter Green and even Nick Lodolo, who doesn't have a ton of innings under his belt as a major leaguer either, to just become professionals and then hopefully lead them into the playoffs. Nick, with that in mind, like, what kind of confidence does that give you now in the Cubs because of Jed willing to kind of throw his his old meat on the table here and say, we are going to go pay for the best rental bat available. We're not going to do much else. We'll go get a relief pitcher in Jose Cuas. We're going to make a little minor trade in sending Manny Rodriguez and Adrian Sampson off to Tampa Bay. But they still did something of impact that drastically helped this team now moving forward.
Yeah, 100%, man. I was actually calling for it early on into that streak. I wanted Candelario. I thought he'd be a spark plug. It's exactly what he is. But when you're a GM that your team just gives you those type of results, you can't do anything but put fuel on that fire because they're on fire right now. And by buying at the deadline, it just shows that he has trust. He gives the Cubs team a little bit more faith. And I think it took the pressure off a little bit. I saw the pressure come off with the deadline and everything for them because they know they basically did exactly what they needed to get done in order for Jed to make the moves that he did. And he did. And credit to him for doing so, because a lot of the chatter was, well, if you're just making these moves to barely skate into the playoffs, is it worth it? Hell yeah. The playoffs are, who knows what happens in the playoffs, So like you guys are saying, year to year, I totally agree with you. And it is such a tricky balance. But baseball seems to be going more towards the year to year. You win when you think you have a chance to win. You go load up. And I'm a firm believer, if you think you do have a chance and you're a GM that thinks like, I do have a chance, go out and make those moves, especially with contracts that are, guys that are done at the end of the year. Use them as leverage and get yourself impact bats, like you said, or arms. Really nitpicky, but I would have liked to see them get another left-hander for the bullpen, but it's really nitpicky because where the Cubs were at to get to where they are now, it's like, well, I can't ask for anything else after Candelario, but I'm really happy about it. I think the Cubs fans are happy, and it's brought a lot more fun to the team, and he looks like he just wants to be here. And that's the type of player you want. You want that guy in your lineup. It takes away, like you said, one extra spot there. It takes away a dead spot. It keeps rallies moving. It's a great move. So I was happy with the deadline.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the interesting part about Candelario, right? Because he was such a seamless fit because of the player he was. There was enough intel on him because they saw him as a prospect, obviously watched him grow in Detroit and then into Washington. And some funny comments here. I have to address them. Jeremiah says the Reds are kind of the same script as 2021 Bengals. Joe Burrow got hurt. They fell down the hill. I think that's what it was. I don't know if they're going to fall down the hill.
2021 was the Super Bowl year.
Okay, fair. I get my years all crossed. I don't know what year is what anymore with the NFL.
They don't make it often, so I understand.
The NFL is weird because you play the entire regular season in one year and then the playoffs are in another year. And then everybody's like, you're a 2007 Super Bowl winner. And it's like, you mean the 2006 team? And they're like, well, no, it's the 2007. Anyway, sorry.
Madden doesn't help that, by the way. So
no, they really don't. And that's on the same level of the comment I made the other night when I was at the Cubs game, because they do the YMCA when there's a pitching change.
Yeah.
95% of people go the wrong way on the C, and it drives me up an absolute fucking wall. Because when you're looking at somebody, it should be Y, M, and then the C should be in a direction where it looks like an actual C, and everybody goes this way. And it drives me nuts. It's the biggest pet peeve ever. Football being the
you have not heard me talk about the wave. So
oh no, we all hate the wave. So if you hate the wave, we're all friends here when it comes to the wave. The wave is the dumbest fucking thing in all of sports. I also hate it. It's really stupid. A couple more comments here. Scott says the Reds could have even traded for some fresh arms. They didn't even need to be that great. After the last 2 days, their bullpen is screwed for a week or longer. And it's a fair point.
Yeah.
And then Scott followed that up. He says the Cubs are the first team to have 10 extra base hits and 5 home runs consecutive games in MLB history per Jesse Rogers of ESPN. That's pretty crazy. But
It's pretty fascinating.
that is pretty fascinating. It's not going to matter at the end of the year if the Cubs don't win the World Series, but it's fascinating. It's a fascinating stat. Nonetheless, I think in terms of what tonight was for this Cubs team and the deadline was, they did what it took. They went and got an impact bat. You've seen it pay off in 2 days now. The Cubs are ready, and the Cubs are going to compete with your Reds, Tim. I really do. I think the Reds are going to be fine. Like, I think they're going to get it together. You mentioned though Hunter Green's coming back and getting healthy. He's a great talent. Lodolo, same thing, really good left-hander. I believe, if I remember correctly, Lodolo pitched in the Field of Dreams game.
He did.
For the Reds.
He did.
Looked really good in that game. You know, he gave up the 2 runs early, but overall looked really good.
God, those unis were phenomenal. Both teams.
Sensational. That was a good game. It just, everybody was like, "Oh, it's never going to be as good as the first one." Well, yeah, of course, because it ended up in a walk-off. But I think this is going to truly, I believe this is going to be a 2-horse race down the road. Like, I think the Brewers are still going to hang around just because they're the pesky Brewers and they're the little brother of the NL Central. But right now, the Reds are this young, exciting team that have the talent. You have McClain, you have Ellie De La Cruz, you have Encarnacion Strand, who is the longest last name in MLB history.
Mhm.
You have, I'm a big Fraley guy. I think Fraley's a really good player. Friedel's a good player as well. There's a lot of really, Joey Votto, again, Joey Votto is the most fascinating player in baseball history. We were talking about this a little bit pre-show because he can have a 216 average, but his OPS is 855 because the dude walks and the dude slugs. Like, that's just what he does. It's the most hysterical thing on the face of the earth. But the Reds are going to get it together. Like, they're going to be in this thing down the stretch. There's no doubt about it. The Cubs are going to be in this thing down the stretch. So I kind of want to turn it to both of you here for some final thoughts. What are you guys both kind of see? We're not the only ones, Tim, really quick. Jeremiah loves Joey
love it.
Votto.
I love it.
Every Cubs fan loves Joey Votto. It's a real thing.
I got a poster of him in my office, so
I can see that now. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Like, we all like Joey Votto. Joey Votto is the only Red not named Nicholas Castellanos and Ken Griffey Jr. in my lifetime that I actually really like.
Barry Larkin?
I wasn't really alive enough for Larkin.
God, you're younger than me. Some bitch.
I'm a little baby. I know. I'm sorry. I'm a big K Griff. Like, Griffey's my number one favorite player of all time. Carl Crawford, a very surprising 1A. I have family in Tampa, so I watched. People know Rocco Baldelli now as the Minnesota Twins manager. I know him as the Tampa Bay Devil Rays center fielder back in like 2003. That's what I know Rocco Baldelli for.
Super nice, immaculate grid play is Carl Crawford.
Oh yeah. Tampa, LA, Boston. Easy one.
30 stolen bases. Yep.
Oh yeah. I think he stole like 65 in one season. He was crazy. Scott Crawford wants to know, Tim, how much longer is Votto going to play? He is tired of him hitting home runs against the Cubs. I am too. The dude is a notorious Cubs killer. So before we get to the final thoughts, I want to know your thoughts on that, Tim. How much longer do you think Joey Votto legitimately plays for the Reds?
It's interesting, right? So this is the last year in his contract. So literally the only money the Reds have on the books for next season is Hunter Green's extension that he signed this year. So, but there is the option. I don't necessarily think the Reds will pick up the option because it's 22. But I fully suspect he will be a Cincinnati Red next year. And what's really fascinating, I was talking about this with my buddies tonight, actually. So Votto is going to, right now, after tonight with his 2 homers, is now 37 home runs behind Johnny Bench for the franchise record in home runs. And so you think about, say he ends this year, they got 2 months left. He's only been back since the middle of June.
Right.
And he's got 10 already. So you got to think he's probably got another 10 in him, right? So comes back, plays next year, DHs most of the time. So it'll be 40 going to the 41 in September, 17, 18 more homers. Like, it's uphill, but it's possible.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. Again, Cubs fans like Joey Votto. So like, If he can go out and get the record, let him. The guy's a career Red. Like if he played
Yeah.
anywhere else, it would look weird. It
Yeah.
really would. The only place I think it would remotely be
Toronto.
somewhat accept. Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth.
It's the thing we've heard for.
It's because he's
15
from
years.
there.
Yeah.
Like that's the only. You know what it is? It's the equivalent of the Chicago Blackhawks and Jonathan Taves going to the Winnipeg Jets because he's from Winnipeg. It's the exact same scenario. The only team you could ever envision him with outside of the city he played in.
It doesn't really work out for the Bulls because it's like Dwayne Wade's in town, Jabari Parker.
Yeah. Well, Chicago's just such a hub for basketball.
Oh,
so,
dude.
like, these guys all go all over the place. Although it was really cool getting to see Wade play at least 1 year in a Bulls uniform. I actually have a Wade Bulls jersey because of that.
I have a really funny story about that. So I
Go
saw
ahead.
Wade play twice live in person.
Mm-hmm.
Once with the Bulls and once with the Cavs. I never saw him live play with the Heat.
The Heat? That's wild. That's absolutely
the greatest
wild.
Miami Heat player of all time, or like as far as legacy, and I never saw him play in that uniform.
I never saw him play with any team. Actually, I never saw him play live ever in my lifetime, which is really unfortunate. I didn't go to my first Bulls game though until like 2019. It's a real travesty, if we're being entirely honest. Scott said a little bit earlier, Votto's interview with Mad Dog Classic. We talked about that a little bit in the pregame, how great that was. But gentlemen, I want to turn it to you here really quick for some final thoughts before we look ahead to tomorrow's game. What do you both think this NL Central race looks like down the stretch here with our two teams, the Reds and the Cubs? Tim, I'll let you go ahead and start it off.
Thankfully, if they can get out of Chicago tomorrow without giving up 17 runs, your schedule kind of, I hate to rely on it because you got to play the games, obviously. But the schedule kind of opens up quite a bit from there. So you got the weekend series with the Nationals. Really the toughest team you play the rest of the year is the Angels. And, God only knows how that's going to work out with them because it's like they're finally like, we got those Ohtani and Trout guys. Maybe we should make a run at it. Can't believe it. But, the schedule really opens up for me. They don't play Milwaukee the rest of the year. Thank God. You got 6 games left with the Cardinals and 6 games left with the Pirates. So, those are 2 teams that you should realistically get 4 wins against. As far as the Cubs, I mean, you look at the standings and you scoot all the way to the right and you see that plus, was it 97 now? 137, 264,000, whatever it is. That's not going to go away. I mean, like you guys said, you got Jeimer Candelario to add to that offense. If you guys want to play Tucker Barnhart a couple more games, like in the lineup, please do. We'd really appreciate it. So we can kind of.
He's only on the roster because of Stroh.
Cooked.
If we're being entirely honest.
Yeah, he was cooked here, so I can only imagine what he's cooked like.
He would have. If remember when you mentioned about Stroman coming to the Reds, something you wanted to see. Like if that trade happened, Barnhart was the throw-in going with him. Just so you know.
9 catchers. We carry 3. Stupidest thing in baseball.
The Cubs also carry 3. So
the Guardians do too. And I'm like, guys, Bo Naylor is awesome. Play him every day.
Bo Naylor is awesome. Oh, yeah. So good. So good. No, I agree. Like there's a lot of offense coming down the stretch. You mentioned the amount of games that are coming up. The Cubs have 7 with the Pirates, 6 with the Brewers, which will be real interesting down the stretch. But the month of August for the Cubs gets pretty easy too, outside of a weekend series here with the Braves and then a away series with the Blue Jays next weekend. The Mets, White Sox, Royals, Tigers, Pirates, and then Brewers at the end of the month on the schedule here for the Cubs in August. So could be a real interesting month. Nick, what do you think here with the NL Central race? What do you think it's going to come down to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to come right down to the wire. I think it's going to be competitive between both the Reds and the Cubs. I mean, the Reds and the Brewers, rather. And I think that ultimately what's going to win this is, like you said, probably schedule and timing. Like what team is good at what time, because that's what really matters, who wins there and who loses there. And I mean, we've said all throughout the year, and I'm sure you guys have too, Tim, this is just a really bad division. So it could go either way,
right?
now it's starting to look better, but it could go either way. But the Cubs are giving me a lot of hope. And I had a lot of hope coming into this season. So this is the team that I wanted to see out there, especially with some great additions now.
Yeah, 100%. Tim, I don't know if you probably didn't listen to our like preseason episode. We were very optimistic here besides
I love it.
Juice. And
I
then
love it.
Juice now, even on last night's show, was like, I'm flipping my
Dude,
thoughts on this team. Like
so
it's crazy.
the Riverfront, it's the same way. Like I'm the like, look, guys, like this is great. Like, this is awesome. And they were like, we'll see how it goes. I'm like, look, I'm 5 wins away from cashing my over wins ticket. All
There you
right.
go. There
So
you go. Gonna win some money, Tim. Let's go.
yeah. Oh
We
man.
love that.
I love being here. This is fun. Like, can I just talk about more Chicago things with you guys, or would you get in trouble? Like,
No, we can talk
oh
some
my
Chicago
God.
things.
So
I don't gotta go anywhere time soon. I don't think Nick's looking to leave yet. So yeah, let's talk. What do we want to talk about? Do we
oh my
want to talk
gosh.
about the Bulls?
I'm happy to. If you want to.
I really don't want to, but we
Okay.
can.
We don't have to.
We can.
No, we can. We
It's
can.
pain. It's
So
just pain.
what do you think? Because we'll finish the episode up here previewing tomorrow's game. That's kind of
Sure.
the cherry on top here. But let's talk a little bit Chicago connection because of yours, Tim. And what do you think the Bulls are going to be this year? Because like I'm not a huge Bulls guy, but I have thoughts. Nick,
Sure.
I'd love to hear yours as well. But what do you think, Tim?
I think they're a lottery team, man.
Ooh.
I really, really so the off season that they made the moves to get Lonzo and DeMar and Caruso, I absolutely loved it. I was so excited. And like that half a year that Lonzo Ball's on the court with the team, like we looked great. I was so happy because like after the Butler trade, like I love Levine, but like
Jimmy's Jimmy.
Jimmy's Jimmy. Right.
Mhm,
Exactly.
mhm.
That's the best way to put it. I just really love that team, and I really thought like this is going to be special, and everything hasn't worked out. And it's like they didn't have a plan B, and I think that's what's always so irritating about the Bulls. And I thought Karnisovas and Mark Eversley were going to be the guys that took care of A, B, C, D. So like the Vooch thing this year, like I would not have signed him back. I did not really enjoy. I mean, like, he at times just like looks like he's got concrete for feet when he's in the paint. So that's really irritating. They trade into the draft this year. They didn't have a pick. They traded like really high into the second round. Have a ton of really good players available, like Colby Jones out of Xavier, guys like that. They draft Julian Phillips, which I like him as an athlete, but that's what the Bulls draft. Julian Phillips is a spitting image of Patrick Williams, who is a spitting image of every draft pick they've had for 4 or 5 years. Besides Laurie, which Laurie needed to get out of Chicago to be good. Like it's just their player development is atrocious.
Correct.
So, man, it's like without Lonzo Ball, like I like getting Javon Carter. I think Javon Carter's a good basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's going to be enough, man. And like I think at some point we are going to be here in February. Like, hey, like is the Zach LaVine thing worth it? Like he's great. He does a lot of good things. He's great for the city, but we're not winning with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart because I want to win. I want them to win so bad. There's 2 years of Derrick Rose were just so fun, man. It was just so great, and I'm sure you guys live there, so you guys felt it all. Like obviously, I'm feeling it here in Northern Kentucky, who's not even from Chicago, just would visit Chicago to see my aunt all the time. And it was just the best. So I just want to feel that feeling again.
There is nothing that has compared since those Derrick Rose teams.
Yeah.
Truthfully, like even the teams in recent years that like were a little bit of fun. Truly, I think the closest we got to that was when Lonzo was healthy.
Oh my God!
And it honestly,
incredible.
That is probably the biggest like travesty in all of basketball, if we're being entirely honest. Because Lonzo Ball is a good player for the game. Like, let's just call it what it is. But the fact that he got hurt, he hasn't been able to get healthy. Like he was the cog that made it all work. There's a reason they paid him the money they paid him.
Yeah. There's a reason they like got in trouble for getting him.
Yes, absolutely. Because they knew better. They said we have 2 legitimate go to the bucket scorers and guys like DeMar and Levine who could take over a game at any point if we asked them to.
Mm-hmm.
You got Vooch in the paint. Offensively, great. Defensively, he's okay.
Yeah.
You got the bench depth, Caruso. The list goes on and on, right? They drafted pretty well too in that category, right? Io and some of the other guys.
Kobe was really good last year. Like, he deserves his credit.
Kobe was really good, and I think he would have been fantastic off the bench with this
Yeah.
team as like that sixth man.
I agree.
In that shooter's role, kind of that shooting guard role. But wow, that team went through Lonzo.
Mhm.
And as soon as he got hurt, you saw it literally like where they were in the standings. They went from the top of the East to the meh of the East because they just crept their way through. And a lot of that was DeMar and Zach taking over games
Yeah.
because they had to. It's honestly a shame. It's not even like we signed this guy for big money. He just didn't play well. It's like we signed him for big money. He just got hurt and he hasn't
Right.
gotten healthy. And it's really weird because again, normally guys get like hurt and then they get healthy and then everything's okay. Lonzo has been like a full blown case study in the
Yeah.
NBA where like he just has not gotten right at all.
And that's what's so irritating about it because it's like, so the first year, it's he'll be back in February. You're
Mhm.
like, okay, great. We'll pick up right where we left off. And then it's like, I don't know. And then he comes out, he's like, I can't even run on a treadmill. I can't go upstairs. You're like, that's a terrible
not good.
feeling.
That's
Yeah.
not
And then it comes out, he's like, well, he will not play the 23-24 season at all. And you're like, fuck all of this. Like,
Yeah.
I will probably not watch many Bulls games on League Pass this year. And that breaks my heart because I just, I love Stacey King. We all do.
Oh, he's the best.
It's
I'll
like,
watch games just for him and
Just for Stacey.
Adam Amin.
especially
We're
Adam
great.
Amin. I like Adam Amin. A lot of
Love
people
him.
give Adam Amin shit. I like Adam Amin a lot.
Yeah.
Love
Big
him.
fan of Adam Amin. Yeah,
So
those
great.
two have fun together. They have a good time together.
Oh,
They're
man.
just all like, they have fun. You could hear them when they're blowing teams out and like a 3-pointer happens and they're shouting in the background. Like that's what you want out of a broadcaster, especially in a sport like basketball. I feel like it fits the vibe of the game.
Yeah.
No, those two are absolutely fun. Joey says, "Preach, Bulls are stagnant, never enough." He says you are close to our guy Tyler Edmonds here, one of our co-hosts here. He's also in Kentucky, so
No kidding.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. And he says should go to a game together. Yeah, well, Joey, you know what, Joey, would have been nice besides a game together, a podcast together, or a show together if you decided to join us tonight. But neither here nor there. Nick, any thoughts about the Bulls, buddy? I don't want to leave you out of this conversation.
Oh yeah. It's
He's
just
like,
so
"Don't die."
depressing. It really is.
He's like,
It's
"I don't
so
need it."
depressing. The thoughts are always depressing. I mean, ever since Lonzo went down, it's just been all downhill from there. But Joey's right. There's just never enough. They don't build. It's that stank from Jerry teams. I'm just convinced of it. It's just he can't. Oh, it's disgusting, really, because Chicago's a hub.
my God.
Great sports fans. They deserve so much more than this. It's absolute bullshit. But I think that maybe, like you said, maybe lottery, maybe they'll sneak in again. But it's just I'm tired of being just a plan. Just it's so sad. But the Lonzo thing is obvious. That's the saddest thing of all because, like you said, it has turned almost to like a case study. It's bizarre. He's just not coming back. And I don't know about you guys. I just feel like he's never gonna come back with
No,
the Bulls.
He's
but
not playing. It's not happening.
It's just
Get that
it's,
disability hardship.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's like not good for the sport either. Because Lonzo was a big name in the sport. Like even when he was at the Lakers, and when he ventured elsewhere, like Lonzo drew fans. Like Lonzo Ball is Lonzo Ball, and for him to not be able to play is really sad. Tim, we will legitimately have to get you to the UC. Maybe not necessarily for a Bulls game, but definitely for a Blackhawks game. The Late Night Reds crew is going to take on the United Center with the Four Feathers game this season. We're going to have to make that happen.
There's just nothing like the United Center, man. I
It's fun.
love it so much. I love seeing the Jordan statue. I love when you see the Scottie Pippen bus sitting there just looking at you. Love it.
We'll have to make that happen. Gentlemen, before we wrap up, want to know your thoughts. Little preview of tomorrow's game. So the Cubs and Reds will close this series out on Thursday, August 3rd. It's a 7:05 Central Daylight Time start, 8:05 for you, Tim, in your Eastern time zone. As we discussed, it is Luke Weaver on the bump for the Reds tomorrow. The right-hander's 2-3 with a 6.80 ERA on the season.
And that's gone down.
Hey, I feel that. Well, That's happened for the next guy too, because Jameson Tyone is on the bump for the Cubs. Despite a 5-6, 5.46 ERA on the season 5-6 record, in the month of July, he's had a sub-3 ERA. He's been really good lately. Hoping he can keep that trend up. Tim, I want to start with you. What do the Reds need to do to beat the Cubs tomorrow and split the series?
Don't give away outs. I think that's key one, right? I mean, if a ball is hitting the outfield and it's like next to the ivy, watch your hand so you know where it's going. Think
Or
that
just
could be
let it go off the wall and just
let
play
it go off the wall and throw it in. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Tyone's really had a good run against the Reds for majority of his career from his time with the Pirates, but he wasn't facing this team. Obviously, a lot of those times he was like, I make fun of the name Patrick Keevlahan all the time. If you don't know that name, you don't have to. He used to be the guy that hit behind Joey Votto in the order in the middle 2010s. If that tells you everything you know about those run of the Reds. The weird thing is we mentioned Luke Weaver. The Reds are 9-2 in his last 11 starts, but he cannot get to the third rotation of the order. It's like the weirdest thing of all time. He's got like a 8.79 his last 11 starts, and the Reds are 9-2 in those games.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Talk about literally the opposite of what you would expect in all of that at the end of the day. Nick, what do the Cubs need to do to take the series 3 out of 4?
Yeah, Tyone's got to keep on the right track that he's been on. I think that it's important for him to get ahead in the count early, shut things down early on, keep guys off base, keep the traffic off. It seems like he gets really under pressure really easily and falls apart. So if he can just keep guys off, keep things going easy, maybe the Cubs will put a couple on the board. It'll be an easy time, but it's a Major League Baseball game. Anything could happen. So we'll have to see. But I'm hoping that Tyone really bounced back. He's a guy that we need to be solid.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of Tyone, just some quick numbers on him. In the month of July, 5 starts in the month of July. He was 3-0 with a 2.67 ERA, 30 and a third innings of work. Only pitched 5 innings once. Everything was 5 2/3 or better during the month. 9 earned runs during the month, 8 walks, 24 K. So a really strong month from Jameson Tyone, looking like the $17 million a year pitcher that the Cubs paid him to be. This year he's making 14. Next year he makes 18. Obviously, it's never consistent. Some guys get more money in certain years, but nonetheless, that was his average annual value when he signed for that 4-year deal in the offseason. Guys, I'm right there with you. It's going to be a really fun one. It's going to be, I think all of these games have been entertaining despite the final scores. The Reds tonight took an early, quick lead and honestly made me a little nervous. I'm not even going to lie. Obviously, the offense came back and saved Drew Smiley, who did not look great in this one, truthfully. But hopefully, Tyone stays on the pace for us. Cubs fans, Tim, for you guys, I hope you lose tomorrow, but I hope you guys continue to win more games and make it interesting down the stretch. Maybe we can do another one of these later in the season as well. But before we get out of here, I want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is one of 2 official Cubs podcasts of the On Tap Sports Network. Follow our friends over at Dinger Cubs on X and Instagram, I guess technically now.
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. Extragram.
Yeah.
Just mix them all together.
You guys haven't gone to Threads yet?
Nah, Threads sucks. It's such a terrible platform.
Yes.
But X and Instagram. You can at Dinger Cubs. You can follow us at Cubbies on Tap. I'm at Loose on Tap, at Nick_on Tap, at Juice on Tap, at Teddy Freddy 270, at Joey Knows Nothing, at Bulls Guy Rob is our prospect guy. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, you guys know the drill. We got it all. Send your miserable Sox friends to our miserable Sox friends over at Sox on Tap. The On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. And for those that enjoy baseball as a whole, go follow Tim at TimDaniel518 on the X app. Go follow at Late Night Reds as well. You guys are awesome. I love listening to your guys' shows. Big fan of yours. Cubs on Tap. We're going to be interacting with the Late Night Reds guys all season long, so be sure to follow them and give them some love. Show your Chicago hospitality and love and support for our friends over in the Cincinnati market. They do a great job, and everybody can truly enjoy it. And guys, It's been a pleasure. Tim, thank you for joining us. Nick, appreciate you jumping on the show with us, buddy. I think Scott has set up the way we need to get out of here before we end this stream, truthfully. Jeremiah is with us too, FTC. He says 1, 2, 3, all together. Just a quick fuck the Cardinals. And let's go Cubbies. And maybe the Reds on Saturday.